Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Anonymous Hedgehog podcast. My name is Maya.
And I'm Rich.
And we will be your hosts. So our topic for today is online health and dieting trends. So I feel like the whole concept of online health and finding information online, I feel like I've tried this so many times where I try to find information online. It's just so confusing. I feel like all the studies and all either the experts, they all say something different. For every diet trend there's an expert to back it up. It's almost like saying oh, experts say this doesn't mean anything anymore because every random, even if it's a random fad diet or if it's a totally legitimate diet, there's always at least one expert that says oh, this is the way to go.
Yeah, and what's funny is that these trends directly contradict each other. There'll be a new trend that says no carbs because carbs cause fat. And then the next day there'll be another trend that's carb only diet. And it's these trends are so contradictory that it sets the average person that's just looking for regular weight loss really confused.
I feel the thing that I've always thought about dieting, or I've kind of come to this opinion after just spending so much time in the online health community that I just feel so lost, is that I feel it just really is individual. I don't think that people can, online people that advocate for diets, I don't think they can confidently say that this is the best diet. I feel it's just so individual that anyone who advocates for a specific type of diet kind of has to make that distinction and make that disclaimer saying oh, this works for me, but it doesn't necessarily work for everyone.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, that's what I think these diets are. They're all marketing trends because half the time you go to these websites that are talking about a new diet, they're trying to sell you some sort of ebook or some sort of diet plan for a couple of months. And it's when these things are purely motivated by money, you have to try to consider is this really for my benefit, or is this just another trend that they're trying to sell me in the hopes of losing fat fast?
I feel that brings up an interesting question about I've heard this too, just a lot of the scientific studies, they're sponsored by different corporations that want to show that their product is good or whatever. Does the should we take into consideration who the sponsor of an experiment is? Will that affect the outcome of the experiment?
Can you say that again?
So should we if there's a scientific experiment, should we take into account who is funding the experiment, or does where the money comes from actually make a difference? Because presumably the results are still the results, right? I guess they can't fudge the results, but should we take into account who the motivation behind it, let's say?
Yeah, honestly, in terms of health and fitness, of course, I recognize scientific studies trump any personal experience or personal opinions because studies are based on facts. But in regards to the fitness world, I just think that the sponsorship of these studies have made them so incredibly biased that it's just better for your overall health to listen to your own body instead of to listen to some sort of study that was financially motivated by some pharmaceutical company on the other side of the world that you don't even know of.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think health is something that is so, I feel there is almost a misconception created, and I feel almost the FDA and a lot of government institutions kind of buy into this too, where if you've looked at, I think the FDA or is it the FDA or maybe the World Health? I'm not really sure, but they released this food pyramid of this is your daily whatever intake of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. But I feel that's it creates a false perception that one diet and one diet and one type of eating habit fits everyone, when the truth is we probably all depending on your different health conditions and where you live and the food that you have access to, that diet can just vary vastly in different parts of the world.
That's so true. Just the fact that dieting and eating is individual. And so personally I hold this view, and I know a lot of people could disagree with it because it doesn't involve, tracking your macros. It doesn't involve calorie counting. My view personally is just to listen to what your body wants. There will be times when you crave carbs And chances are, if you're craving carbs, your body needs carbs. There will be times when you crave sugar. Chances are, when your body is craving sugar, you need sugar. But it all depends on where you're getting that sugar and carbs from, right? So anytime I crave sugar, I go for a fruit. Or I go for dates, which are extremely high in sugar, but they're also high in fiber that helps break that sugar down faster than, say, a candy bar. So I feel like we've evolved for thousands of years, and our bodies are so good at listening to what we need. Like, we are the ultimate diet plan individually. And it just comes down to listening to your body in the right way. And the right way means going for a healthy option that satisfies those needs that your body is telling you.
I think that what you're, or like the kind of way that you're talking about is intuitive eating. I've seen like a lot of videos and a lot of research about it online. It's kind of just like listening to your body's internal hunger cues instead of listening to those external hunger cues, like your calories or whatever, your macros, to determine what you should eat. And I think that, I feel like that's, again, something that only works for a certain amount of people because, like, for example, like I saw this thing, like you can't, like for someone who, I think some people naturally do have a bigger appetite, and you can't tell someone who is like programmed to overeat to eat until they're full because they are gonna naturally overeat on their calories. So I think that it only, like, again, I feel like that is something that only works for some people. And also I feel like a lot of people just have a difficulty distinguishing between emotional hunger and like physical hunger. And it's like so hard to actually to determine which one is which. Yeah. And I think that like, so I actually do count calories, and I think that counting calories gives me kind of like, it just gives me a good benchmark, and it makes like, and so like, I have an idea like, oh, if I'm overeating on my calories for that day.
I see. That makes sense. It also could happen to do with like what our end goal is. So for you, like I know your goal is to lose weight, right? Not to gain weight. For me, my goal is to gain weight because I'm doing more of like weightlifting type training, which puts on muscle and you record that growth through like a gain in weight. And for you, you know, like things like cardio, you record that by a loss in weight. And so I think for me, when I'm trying to gain weight, I need to listen to my body cues more because I just need a caloric surplus at the end of the day. So it just, the only thing I need to listen to is what I fuel myself with for that caloric surplus. For someone who's trying to lose weight, it might be easier to count calories because listening to your body is more of an input, not like an output.
I agree. But I also like, yeah, so I definitely agree with that. But I also feel like sometimes your body will, like, for example, like putting on muscle, you likely need like high amounts of protein, but sometimes your body will crave carbs rather than protein. So I think like where you're getting those calories from really does make a difference. Yeah, I feel like it's just something that is just so individual. I don't know. Do you feel like the online, I think that there, like online health has just become kind of like a trend. I feel like especially during quarantine, like everyone is trying to become fit. Everyone is like, do you think that the online health trend is beneficial? Like it makes people more aware of our health, or is it kind of harmful because it makes people just so confused about it?
You know, I actually kind of dislike it, but there's a side of it that I really enjoy. And the side of it I enjoy is the forums, you know, like on Reddit, or I know there's a website like bodybuilding.com or something. And there's just forums where people can ask personalized questions. And that's where things turn individual, where you submit a picture of yourself and people look at your body type. And based on that, they recommend different things. What I don't really like is websites that sort of promote like a 30-day fat blast belly training workout. And with those, it's like, you need to keep it up for 30 days. And then afterwards, it's like, okay, I already did my plan. I'm done.
Yeah. I think that like, yeah, I've seen like a lot of like YouTube videos or like videos that's just like, oh, lose fat in like 30 days or like get like a 6-pack in 30 days. And I think that, yeah, people just don't get that people's bodies just kind of operate differently, and the results are going to look vastly different for different people. I just also feel like do you feel like we're almost like as a society, we're just like, I feel like we've become I don't know if this was always a thing, but I feel like it's been more like amplified recently. Like, do you think that like having like our obsession with having like a good body shape or like a good body is something that is justified, or do you think that's something that is more harmful?
Oh, I think it's 100% justified. Especially especially at a time like this where like people are going out to get fast food like all the time. And it's just so easy to just succumb to like unhealthy eating. Back in the day, like 100 years ago, the average weight was not as high as it is right now, just because fast food wasn't so vastly available. People had more limited options, and the limited options just included more healthy food. And so I think now it's more important than ever to just have sort of society encouraging you to lose weight and get fit, and this is purely from a health standpoint, not from like like people should be attractive standpoint. But I just think it's really, really healthy to be fit. And right now it's way too easy to just succumb to all of the unhealthy options.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think that societal pressure not to necessarily look a certain way, but to be healthy is something that will, I guess, benefit us in the long run in terms of like life expectancy, like rates of heart disease, etc. What's something that I found, or like I found by looking in the health community a lot, I feel like the term eating disorder has really evolved into something that it wasn't before, if that makes sense. I feel like the word, like, I see, maybe it's just become more popular, like a trend on YouTube. I see like people revealing my eating disorder story and things like that. I think that there are some people who genuinely do have an eating disorder, but I think it's the same thing with like mental health. It's just like people who, it's become kind of a trend to have an eating disorder and like to talk about it online, so much that people see like any type of healthy eating as an eating disorder.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it's become a joke now too. Like it's become amongst a lot of my friends that I have, they'll joke around with oh, like I have anorexia, I can't eat that. And it's like funny at first, but when you keep on saying it and repeating it to yourself, like at some point you're going to convince yourself that you actually have anorexia, and it's going to do more harm than good.
Yeah, I feel like, and it also like broadening the scope of the term, the same as like broadening the scope of the term mental health, it like diminishes the experiences of people who actually do suffer from it. Like people who actually do suffer from depression, like let's say like saying just like, oh, I'm depressed, and all those like angsty teens posting on Tumblr, that just like diminishes people who actually do suffer from depression and who like legitimately like they can't go to work and they can't go to school because they suffer from depression. I feel like the same thing is true about eating disorders. It's just like people who like, honestly, I think people have like, when I told people that I like count my calories, I think a lot of people, it's like, some of my friends like, oh, that's signs of an eating disorder. I'm like,
what?
But it's like, but I'm just counting my calories as like a reference, to something that, so I can keep track of. Like, I feel like that diminishes the experiences of people who do suffer from eating disorders and who's like, their health is actually ruined by that.
Yeah. So there's always two sides to the argument of like whether or not broadening a term diminishes its actual impact, because broadening the term also just spreads publicity about these eating disorders. And so more people know what anorexia is now than before, when the term was very limited. So I'm not sure if that's a good or a bad thing, but what I am confident about is like people claiming to have an eating disorder when they really don't. That's definitely negative for society.
Yeah, definitely there are a lot of people who are just clout chasing, who just like, who want people to just feel sorry for them, and who want like either just views on a YouTube video, or they just want the clout of having an eating disorder. And but yeah, I think that brings up an interesting question where it's just like, I feel like a lot of this happens like with so many terms in society. We're just like the point where we want to increase like we want to increase conversation, or we want to increase the publicity of the term. We want to make it more normalized in society. Like, for example, like being trans or being gay, like we want that to be more societal, like socially accepted. And that is that is a good thing, right? We don't want people marginalized for being gay or being trans or having eating disorder or having depression. But at a certain point, it loses its impact, right? Because like people who are taking advantage of the broadening of the term to kind of put themselves in the circle instead of trying to raise awareness, they're just trying to take advantage of the situation.
Exactly. Yeah, it's hard to find that balance, but I think at some point, like every society will go overboard. Once a term becomes popularized, everyone will go overboard and it'll become a trend for a little bit, but then it ultimately sort of wears off. And I think people keep each other in check because now that, for example, now that eating disorders are vastly known of, there's also a lot of people who know that eating disorders are serious. And there's people who will keep other people in check to make sure that people aren't lying about it and people aren't exaggerating the concept or people aren't downplaying it. So I think, there's always two sides to it. And so we can't really argue whether or not it's good or bad.
Yeah, I definitely do think it's just like, there's always a certain point. Like, there's a certain point in which you've crossed the line. And like, it's really hard to know when we've actually reached that point. And I think social media has just exacerbated like this whole situation. Yeah. Like with any term, whether it's like LGBT issues or like eating disorder or it's like mental health, like social media it's kind of just like fast forwarded the whole trend. It's just like something can become a trend within like a night or two. We see this with the like active internet activism right now. Like within 24 hours, like everyone has been flooding social media posts with like Black Lives Matter and things. And like, it's just so crazy how like it can just become like, I think it's just like, it's fast forwarding the entire process in which it becomes popular so quickly and it dies down so quickly.
Yeah. And the fact that things spread fast is good, but the fact that they die just as fast, I feel like nullifies that whole effect. But talking about like fitness and, Instagram and people posting things and trends going up and down, like I feel like Instagram has actually contributed in a positive way towards like my fitness goals.
Like in what way?
Like I follow a bunch of people who like will post just daily fitness videos of their workouts and just pictures of themselves. And I feel like it motivates me because I want to look like them at some point. And I know they've been training for like 5 or 6 years and I'm only in like my first year of serious training. And so obviously I know that I can't look like them right now. And it can be a little bit discouraging at times when it's like, why don't I look like that? I'm putting in so much, why don't I look like that? I'm putting in so much work. But I feel like the pros outweigh the cons because at the same time, just constantly seeing these images motivates me to go out there and try to look like that.
I feel like this brings up an interesting topic, like the unrealistic body standards. I feel like it's such a hot topic, like term now. Whether it's like with men or like women, there are obviously like standards and people do want to strive for like a certain look, and that's totally fine. Do you think that, I feel like this is just very interesting because I don't know, I know a lot of like women's like lingerie brands, they've tried to put more like realistic models on there. Or they just try to put like normal people who are not like super skinny or, like super fit. Do you think like, I feel the same way as you, or just like those, we call it unrealistic, but the truth is like, I feel like those are real people.
They are real people. Yeah.
So like, it shows me that I can achieve that. So it gives me motivation. I feel like I'm like you. Yeah. Where it just like, if I see someone else that, who is like, who just eats right and exercises right, I'm like, oh, I can look like that too if I just work hard.
Yeah. 100%.
But I feel like, a lot of people have just been saying it's like unrealistic body standards that I guess like for some people it hurts their self-esteem and it hurts their, I don't know. Do you feel like it's like a beneficial thing or?
Yeah. So, okay. So for me, to me, like it doesn't hurt my self-esteem personally because I know when I see something that's unrealistic and I know if I can't achieve it. But
Mm-hmm.
that's because the people I follow, like it's very clear if someone is using like steroids or if they're
Uh-huh.
natural, something like that. If someone's
Uh-huh.
using steroids, like there's no point in me, feeling bad about my natural body that's only
Uh-huh.
1 year into training, just from a logical standpoint. The same goes with, I know for women, it's less steroids and it's more like Photoshop.
Mm-hmm.
And that's unrealistic because like, yeah, it's a real person, but that's not like a real perception of her.
Mm.
And so I think it just comes down to like, are you able to decipher when things are real and when things aren't real? And I feel like it's okay to have high standards for yourself when the picture is real. When it's a real, like for me, like when it's a real bodybuilder who's not on steroids, it doesn't matter if he's 10 years into training and he's 4 times my size, like it's achievable. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a realistic standard. Like whether or not I ever get to that standard, like that's not the question. I think it's just it should be more normalized to have high standards and still be
Mm.
okay with not achieving those high standards.
I definitely agree. I think that it should be normalized to like yeah feel that you are almost like feel that you're not enough or feel like that you're not good enough or just like
Yeah.
you're not at the point where you want to be. And I feel
Yeah.
like the whole concept of just like self-love and self-acceptance like
Uh-huh.
it's I feel like it's grown to a point where like it's almost bad to want to change yourself in any
Oh
way, either
yeah.
physical or like mentally or like your job or things like that. But I think like I agree, like having high standards
Uh-huh.
should be a normal thing. Like people say like, oh, you can't compare yourself with like, those like celebrities and billionaires. But why can't you?
Yeah,
Like
like you
that's something
can.
that you
Yeah.
can strive towards, right? I think
Uh-huh.
it gives people motivation to become better. And I think that's something that's really admirable.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's a very controversial view too,
Mm-hmm.
especially right now. But like, I don't think there should be controversy in just setting high standards for yourself because if you set a standard for yourself that is already what you are, then how are you supposed to grow? Like, like the view shouldn't be like, oh, like I'm not at my high standard, I'm going to be sad about it. The view should be, I'm not at my high standard, which means I have so much space to grow, which is a good thing
Mm-hmm.
because then I can grow. Did you see like the Adele transformation?
Yeah, I did. That
Yeah.
was pretty crazy. I think it was crazy how so many people were like, well, like I think it's crazy how controversial it was. That's
Yeah.
that's what I want to say. Like I just like I think it's like cool like she lost so much weight, but like I
Uh-huh.
just people were so like
Like mad.
it was so controversial. And I'm like, why is this
Yeah.
controversial? She lost weight and she looks great and like
Yeah.
she looks great and she's obviously yeah, she like obviously like a lot healthier considering that
Mhm.
she was probably like considered overweight before.
Mhm.
And she worked hard and she wanted to show off her body.
Mhm.
And so that was something that, should be applauded. And
Mhm.
I was just kind of like surprised how many people who were like quote unquote like for body positivity, like body acceptance who were like shitting on her because she lost all the weight. It's
Yeah. Yeah, and they were like unfollowing her and they were leaving mean comments and it's like you shouldn't be mad at someone for reaching a higher standard. And it comes down to like if you make people that look the exact same way as you your idol and then they change, like that shouldn't be a reason for you to stop having them as your idol and that shouldn't be a reason for you to be mad at them for changing. Like it's okay to have different goals of fitness and healthiness. Like it doesn't matter if you're overweight and you're happy with it, like stay overweight, that's fine. Just from a health standpoint, if you're overweight and you lose weight, like that's a commendable thing. And just because someone has like a different goal doesn't mean that they should be berated on social media for actually achieving that goal.
I feel like that's interesting. It's just like I think that people who say that other people can't have high standards, it's almost like making an excuse for yourself because you don't hold yourself to a high standard, that you
Yeah.
don't want other people. Honestly, like if you don't hold yourself to a high standard, you want to stay the way you are, that's totally fine,
Yeah.
right? But like you can't prevent other people from wanting to
Exactly.
improve.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the most toxic trait I can think of. Of like getting angry and jealous over someone else's success. I think that's like the definition of toxicity.
And I think that's why like people hate, I guess, billionaires. People hate a lot of successful people like Jeff Bezos. They hate them so much because that person was able to hold themselves to such a high standard and to achieve so much. Like I think the CEO of Starbucks or something, I'm pretty sure he grew up on welfare, and he was just like very poor growing up, but he was able to like hold himself to a high standard and achieve all those goals. And I think a lot of people are jealous because they didn't even try. Like they didn't even like they know that they like, oh yeah, they're just like, yeah, I can't become a billionaire. So they don't even try. They don't even try to be that successful, and they don't hold themselves to a high standard. And they're mad that other people do.
Yeah. And they're not just mad that the other person's successful. I think the anger stems out of them thinking that their success is hindering their own success. The people angry at Adele aren't mad that she's healthy. They're just mad that because she's healthy and she's also their idol, now she's forcing them to have a higher standard, and that's hindering their own success.
That's true. It's just like like she was like, if you were the same body type as Adele, you could be like, oh, it's okay, like Adele is like this, so like I don't need to change because Adele is famous, Adele is like so talented, and so I don't need to improve myself because I'm just like Adele. But now they are forced to like reevaluate their standards for themselves. I think that brings an interesting point, like just the whole concept of like, should we base our standards on necessarily other people, or should we base it more on like a more, I guess, attainable goal? Like not like for example, if your standard was not Adele, but like let's say your standard was like a bodybuilder, but like suddenly that bodybuilder like gained a lot of weight, like is it good for you to set your standard as that person, or more of just like a general image of like how you want your body to be?
Yeah, this ties back into when we were talking a little bit about relationships in the last podcast, about like, are you dating a person or are you dating the idea of that person, right? And in this, like in the case of a relationship, like you should be dating the person, not the idea. But in the case of a role model, you should be idolizing an idea, not a person, right? Because people change. But the idea that the person represents, like the idea that bodybuilder represents, to me, it's not his personality. It's not his sense of humor. It's not his family. It's purely the way his body looks. And if the way his body looks changes, I should find a different idol that represents the same idea. Or else I'll have to change based on some external factors that I haven't even heard of that don't matter to me.
Yeah, I agree. Because like you don't know, like the truth is like your knowledge of that bodybuilder is only like their body, right? You don't actually know like their family, you don't know their personality, you don't know their sense of humor. You only know their body. So I think, in that case, it's okay to just chase an idea of someone, because that's like, that's all you care about, and that's the only part that impacts you. Because even if you tried, you couldn't possibly know all the different aspects of that person. And like we were saying last episode, like people change. Like a person isn't like static. A person is, their personality and all their aspects of their life are malleable. And if you idolize that person, you are forced to you're forced to change your life into their life. Like, does that make sense? Like you don't the factors that influence them, you are forced to kind of seek out those factors and make them influence you.
Yeah. And this is like, there's so many connections going on now, because like, this is the exact same reason people say don't idolize your partner, because your partner changes. And your actual goals and preferences, they don't change. So when you idolize your partner and your partner changes, that causes like this discrepancy between your expectations and what's actually happened. But in the case of actual like Instagram influencers, you want to idolize like not their personality, but the way they look or whatever it is that you're chasing about them. So it's like an interesting comparison.
I think that that's like I guess it's like an issue of using real, more kind of like normal people. It's just like using normal people in your like bodybuilding ads, like people who don't have like a six pack. It kind of takes away that like idea and puts it back into like a real person. Does that make sense? Like instead of like people being able to idolize an idea and strive towards like a perfect body, it almost creates like you should be like this person rather than like being like this specific body type. And I think that like you said, like with your partner, it's healthy to see them as a real person and not an idea. But like with your goals, when you put your goals, like it's almost like when you set your goals too low, when you set them too realistic or too like attainable, not to say your goals are unattainable, but it like hinders your progress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it can actually make you like do the opposite. Like if your goal is to just look like somebody and then they end up looking worse than you because something happens to their personal life, then you shouldn't go out and try to look worse just to match them.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Well, with that, it's been 30 minutes, so I guess we'll conclude this episode.
Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you all next time.